wanted to hear all about that, but oh my God, James over there. I love it. I
Awesome.
want to hear, all about ranches, but then I think that agents can learn about a lot about just diving into niches and thriving in the niche real estate market. So I'm going to let you take it away, Lindsey.
Awesome. Well, first I'll start about me, how this came about. So I'm the oldest of three girls, next best thing to a boy to my father. My mother is an Italian Catholic beauty queen. My father is a hillbilly from Southern Kentucky. They met in South Florida. And when I say South Florida, I don't mean like the beautiful, pristine beaches of Miami or anything like that. I mean the Everglades, like in the swamp. My dad has an airboat. Like it cannot get more South Florida hillbilly, like you've seen, on those TV shows, with the gator hunters. Like literally, I grew up in that life, but also had this very sophisticated, proper mother. It's kind of having the best of both worlds of being a redneck and then this Italian goddess of my mom. So that's how this works and came about. My father is a surveyor. He's actually famous for surveying the Everglades. So I grew up understanding maps and dirt and topography, since I was very small. My father always made sure that we never got lost. And if we did, we got in a lot of trouble, and then also had to learn the lesson of how to read the map and the grids and all these things that are not taught anymore. So ended up in Texas by way of Missouri. I was a competitive shooter. I got a scholarship to shoot. I won national titles, ended up being on the fast track of the Olympic development team, learning and training for the Olympics. And so there was only a few public facilities in the United States to do the type of shooting that I was training for. And there was a lot of facilities that were high quality in Texas. So I decided that rather going to Colorado, where the main Olympic facility is, and I shoot outside. So in Colorado, you spent probably 4 months shooting in the snow. And I was like, I'm good. So when these facilities opened up in Texas, I was like, I'm going to head down there. The part of Texas I live in is called the Texas Hill Country. It is not what you think when you think about Texas desert or, cowboys. It is very beautiful, rolling hills, crystal clear, spring-fed rivers. So when you talk about dry heat, no, it's really not dry. We're a blend of dry and then the humidity hits. So, but the views are amazing. I live in a charming town of Fredericksburg, Texas. Fredericksburg is also known as the wine country of Texas. So there are a ton of vineyards, ton of tourists, lots of live music. So it is a destination, as you could say, but also too, it's massive in the hunting world. So the hill country is kind of the heart of the hunting industry, and me being a competitive shooter, I also was raised to hunt. So I've been shooting since I was 5. I went on my first hunting trip with my dad when I was like 12. So that is my background and how I fell into really having a passion for farm and ranch, because in Texas, hunting is a very large part of the economic development, leasing out your ranch to hunting, actually having a commercial hunting operation. These are very lucrative and money-making businesses here in Texas. And not just Texas, there's other ranches that do that around the United States. But for me, that's my passion. And that rolls in to niche markets. So there are several different types of niche markets. Farm and ranch is one, commercial is one, thinking outside the box, finding a niche market that you have a passion in or some sort of life connection in. So for me, hunting, shooting, fishing, outdoors. I was raised in a small town in Florida, Okeechobee, that is actually famous for a lot of cattle. Brangus, Angus, Brahma, if you're familiar in the cattle world. So understanding that and that passion, I know how to talk to my clients in my niche market. So it's very important that finding a niche and being successful at it has to do with a lot of your connection and your passion to it. So another amazing niche for our veteran real estate agents is focusing on VA opportunities and VA real estate, veterans real estate, because there's multiple opportunities if you study that and know the benefits, and being able to share that with our veterans, because their VA loans, they're a benefit to them, their gift, they've earned it, so that also is one. I did say commercial, and then there's multiple facets of commercial, just like farm and ranch. So, some people sell skyscrapers, some people develop apartment complexes, some people sell restaurants. So it also too, in the farm and ranch world, we have niches of niches. So some people sell cattle ranches, some people sell recreational ranches, a nice home on acreage. Some people sell hunting ranches like me. That's my specialty niche, because I understand how to talk and evaluate a property with my client based on that opportunity, if they're going to run an operation or lease their ranch out to outfitters that are going to run it for them, and then the legal side of that and who I can connect them with. So just that's kind of a few niches. Luxury is another amazing niche, and EXP, if you're in the EXP world, them rolling out with those benefits as well. So finding a niche that you're passionate about and really have the heart, because remember, we are in the people business. So if you can't talk the talk and walk the walk, you're going to have a very hard time relating to your clients and being able to give them that trustworthy experience and the best customer service and the knowledge. Because if you're passionate about it, you're going to want to learn. You're going to want to dive in deep. You're going to want to know every source and licensed professional you have to know to answer these questions. Like I tell all my agents in my Farm and Ranch Friday and on my team, you are the source of the sources. We are the professionals and, kind of the leaders of these promulgated forms to help them through the buying and selling process. However, there's a lot of questions and things that are going to come up about the property as a three-dimensional item. You have air rights, you have water rights, you have surface rights, you have oil and gas, minerals, liabilities, economical studies, as far as there's parts of Texas where, not to scare you, but like this is a normal part of ranching. So there's certain counties in Texas that every now and then anthrax will show up in the soil. Anthrax has been in the soil forever. That's nothing new. A lot of ranchers know that. But I sold a little hunting ranch to a woman who is also a chemist. And when I said that, she panicked. And I said, you know what? Let's get you with some farmers that have experienced this for generations. This is not the anthrax that's mailed in an envelope that we're all familiar with. Also, too, diseases that run in the wildlife naturally. So, CWD is chronic waste disease. It affects deer all over the United States. We had a little outbreak here in Texas in a handful of counties. So studies were done. Obviously the state got involved, but, letting people know if they're big hunters, hey, by the way, right now, because CWD was discovered in this county, if you guys go hunting and shoot a deer, you have to go to the check-in station to have the deer tested, because they also want to take and assist with the habitat. There's a lot of other facets when it comes to the environmental side. And as an agent, do I know everything about CWD and chronic waste disease and anthrax in the soil, or any other kind of disease or environmental issue with the ranch? No. There's ranches sometimes, more often than not, very old ranches have a what we call a little dump site, or it was common for ranchers to dig a big hole, burn a bunch of stuff, throw, if they shot a deer and you skinned it, you would put the carcasses in this hole. And sometimes these holes got covered up. And we're talking about ranches that have been in Texas, at least, we're up to 7-8 generations right now. So if you have a legacy ranch you're selling, knowing where all the bodies are buried, literally. Like some of these ranches actually have cemeteries on them. So knowing the laws of cemeteries, which is huge, because if you have a cemetery on your property, you have to offer an easement for any person to be able to access that cemetery. So, that's the whole people saying, hey, I don't want people on my property. It's like, well, legally, you have to provide access. And in Texas, it's not uncommon to see, people that came over, we're kind of near the wagon trail here, that came across. So there are some, I was actually at a vineyard that was once a ranch on the river, and it has a little cemetery. And some of those tombstones are from like the early 1800s. And it's cool, it's history, but also understanding, like, your client knows, listen, like, you have to provide some sort of access, even if it's like a side gate and a private gated, you don't want people on your property, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of access to that. So when we talk about niche markets, and it's a great opportunity to make a lot of income, there's also a double-edged sword where there's a lot of education involved. And how do you get that education? How do you dive in to niche markets? And the first item I always say is evaluate who you are as a person, what your passion is. Because if you are not passionate or have some sort of life connection to the niche market, then you really don't have a story to tell or to connect with your clients. And really that does matter. And if you come in without that, you're really, you're coming at a disadvantage, because you have a lot of homework and life skills, that you need to have or experience to relate to that client and the lifestyle they have been living, or their family has been living for generations. I had a broker one time I worked with, very large farm and ranch agency. And he said, how the hell can you sell a ranch if you don't drive out of a gate every day? Like, if you can't quote what cattle prices and goat prices are, or, did you go to the last exotic sale or, cattle sale? Do you know where your sale barn is? So like I said, you can't talk the talk, can't walk the walk. So that would be my first advice, figuring out what your passion is, what you're connected in, so you can connect to your clients, because obviously bridging that gap in trust is number one. Does anybody have any questions before I kind of move on to the next little nugget of knowledge that I've come across?
Well, and another tiny niche that you have, just kind of a comment, I guess, that you can kind of relate to with people, even though you've got that huge like ranch niche, I guess for people that don't have that crazy ranch knowledge, and they're like, where the fuck would I possibly start in selling homes? Pet knowledge or whatever, like, relate to people on something that you have in common with them. Lindsey said, we are in the people business. That's what I tell people on my team. We are in the people business first and the house business second. That's what I've always told them. Like, we're in the real estate business second, 100%. So yeah. I just want to jump in there and say that.
No, I appreciate that. I tell people, diversifying your real estate portfolio, making your license work for you. I mean, that's smart business. So to dive into a niche market, you have to evaluate, why do I want to be in this niche? So this being more farm and ranch niche related, this is where I dive into, there's a lot of niches within that funnel. So, it's not just cattle, it's not just hunting. It could be fishing, it could be timber. Timberland is very lucrative. Selling vineyards. A vineyard is a farm. First things first, they are planting grapes and they are farming. So understanding soils, that's huge. Any type of recreational property.
How does somebody start to go in and do like a deep dive on like those micro niches, if you will?
Honestly, partnering, just like anything you learn, I would say partnering with an expert, because that is going to be the fastest way to learn as much as possible. Don't reinvent the wheel. So like with me, I have a team and I have a training, and I teach you, let's start from the basics. Like, one, you can't jump into a niche market of real estate without knowing basic real estate. So, at this point, how to fill out a 1 to 4, we call it 1 to 4. You know how to fill out a residential contract. You understand the nuts and bolts of that contract, because those nuts and bolts are also going to carry over to a farm and ranch contract or a commercial contract. There may be different words for the option period or the feasibility period or the objection period or the earnest money, but they're all going to have those parts. So first things first, you have to understand basic real estate. And then, what's my niche? Okay, so you want to dive into farm and ranch. Partner with an expert, partner with a farm and ranch broker, somebody that's been in the business. Most of the people in my network of advisors for farm and ranch have been in the business 10 to 20 years. So you're talking about every example, every piece of verbiage and advice. Those brokers, most of them are at a broker level at that point, are going to know, here's how you problem solve. Here's how you basics. How do you interview a buyer? It's not like, hey, we're interested in seeing this house. It's like, okay, you want to go see this ranch. Well, have you spoken to one of our land lenders? We don't have banks that lend.
And so James has a great question. Do the animals convey with the ranch? Like, are those negotiable items? Like, how does that work?
They're negotiable items. Typically, we like to do a bill of sale on those items because they are a commodity. So the price for those animals fluctuates based on the market. So cattle prices, what type of cattle they're at, are they pregnant? Because, that's 2 cows. That's not, that's 2 cows, not one. The type of breed, the same thing with horses. You have a horse ranch. Typically, they're non-real estate items. However, they are a part of the working ranch, just like crops. So if you're selling a ranch and you have a crop harvest that you've been working on, are they purchasing those crops, or they're giving you the opportunity to harvest them that next year in rotation? So once again, having an expert to explain that process, once you get to the nitty gritty, like for me, interviewing sellers. Okay, here's what you have. How do you want to do this? Are you taking the animals with you? Are you taking the equipment with you? We have a lot of non-realty items that are not always an exact count. With animals, it's not an exact count. Like I said, you could have pregnant cattle, you could have pregnant wildlife. Like I said, we sell exotics and have exotic ranches here. I actually listed a ranch with 2 tigers and a leopard here in Texas. So there's a lot that goes into that. And to me, the fastest dive is partner with an expert, and you're going to pay for the education. Just like when you started real estate, you had to have a mentor, you had to have a partnership. You're paying for that education, but that once you have it, no one can take it from you. So for me, starting in the basics, like diving in, how do I talk to buyers? How do I talk to sellers? And who are my sources? So in niche real estate, there's always going to be sources that support that level in niche real estate. So for us, it's land lenders, it's surveyors, it's our farm and ranch attorneys, not just a real estate attorney, but an attorney that understands farm and ranch. Your veterinarians, your sale barns, or for me, the president of the Exotic Wildlife Association, he tracks all the sales of all the different exotic animals and what are they worth. Like I said, it's a commodity, just like food or corn. Just stock market, the prices go up based on demand and go down. So based on when you're buying, the non-realty items of livestock can change, just like crops can change. So having your finger on the pulse and knowing who the expert is, you will refer them to, like if I like selling that ranch with two tigers and a leopard, and all these other exotic animals, going to the president of the Exotic Wildlife Association, say, listen, you follow the sales of these animals and how much they're worth, male, female, and giving my clients a rough estimate of, this is a fair evaluation of, here's what the land's worth, but you want all the animals, so this is the overall price. Also, the appraisal is not going to value the animals. So making sure that your clients understand, hey, we're buying the ranch for 7.5, but 1 million of that is livestock. So the property will appraise, hopefully for 6.5. And so sometimes there's a cloud, and I had this happen with new landowners. They're like, oh, well, it appraised for 6.5. We want to offer 6.5. And it's like, no, you're buying $1 million in animals. So the property did appraise correctly. There's a bill of sale over here. You're going to have to pull that money out of somewhere because it's not going to come out of the loan. So just having the knowledge there, like I said, partnering with an expert. Probably, I'm trying to think. I started selling ranches full time in 2015, and truly, it was maybe 4 years before I literally had a handle to do it myself, to be able to be like, here's my list of sources, and we have this problem, or we're having an issue with the survey. Here's the attorney we go to.
How long does it take to sell a ranch? In residential real estate, I mean, it's boom, boom, boom. But I'm betting with ranches, it's taken a bit longer.
Risk, reward, and it's all relative. So my average ranch sale is $5 million, but it may take me a year to sell that ranch. It's not uncommon. The average is a year to 2 years, because our pool of buyers is tiny. So they're not looking. There's plenty of people that can buy a home for $200,000 out there. There's only a handful of people that have the income to afford, a $5 million ranch. You think, and most of those are actually LLCs or companies, using it as a write-off, or, they really are in that business, and that's a lucrative business for them. So your pool is small, but it's big game. So understanding that, we just had a group of agents here at EXP sell a ranch for over $100 million. That deal took about 3 years to come to fruition. So in 3 years, they received a $3 million commission check, but that's 3 years on one ranch that may never sell. So understanding also how to manage your money, because this business does have a lot of risk and reward. And I always tell people it's relative. You guys turn and burn, you're getting a paycheck, every other week, you have 5 closings or more in a month. We may have 1 closing every 3 months or 6 months. But that paycheck is going to last us for a year or 2. So it is all relative in that aspect. And also diversifying your portfolio. There are ranches that sell faster. So smaller niche ranchettes, as we call them, here in Texas, a lot of our military, they obviously to qualify for their VA, it has to have residential on it, but they can have as much land as they want as long as there's a house on it. So I have vets that are like, hey, I want to have a nice house in the country where I can shoot my guns. And it's like, okay. So, that's another niche within the niche. And so those will turn a little faster. But if you're in the big game of premier ranches and actual farm and ranch agricultural business, it's a long game. It's a very profitable long game. And also, this is where the passion comes in. If you love it, you do not feel like you're working. I show up with my dogs in my buggy with my snake boots on, and we are just living our best life. If you ever follow me on Instagram, my hunting dogs come with me, because that's a mindset that we have in farm and ranch real estate. It's like, we all have our hunting dogs. We put our snake boots on. We understand, some of the liability and dangers of our profession. If you can imagine that.
That's where I'm fucking out. I'm out of ranches. Well, I'm fucking out, guys. You had me, then you lost me.
Yeah, I've shot a few rattlesnakes on showings, or representing representing the seller. And that's another side nugget. Majority of our ranches, as a listing agent, you just don't give people the gate code and let them walk around. You're there for every showing. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of financial investment to show up. And there's been ranches. It was a 2.5 hour drive. I'm hauling my truck and my buggy. It's an all-day affair. Higher level ranches, we actually take helicopters, because in Texas, it may be 2.5 to 3 hours per ranch to drive, just to get there. and back. So if you're supposed to show 3 ranches in one day, that actually isn't physically possible. So at the level of you have a guy wanting to buy a $10 million ranch and you've narrowed it down to 3, I have no problem paying a helicopter pilot, $650 an hour. And you get to bounce through all of those listings in one day. And if you have someone that's going to buy a $10 million ranch, they're going to be used to that lifestyle and it's going to present well. Just like having your vehicle in residential, super clean, super nice, enough room for everybody to fit in. It's definitely a different life. It's a fun life. But you're going to have to start with somebody who can teach you the ways, because if you decided to do it on your own, one, the chances of you doing it wrong a handful of times and not knowing the sources, you're really going to be beating your head up against the wall. And also too, it's a tight niche market. We're all buddies. Like most of the properties that we have aren't even on the market. We don't use the residential MLS. Majority of my listings are pocket listings, off market. If I have a buyer, a lot of our buyers are like, hey, if you see one of these, let me know. There's several counties where I call up the main broker in charge of the county. I'm like, hey, Junction, Texas, to me, Kelly Kothman, the Kothman family, like 8th generation Texan, pretty much founded one of the founding families of Texas. I call up the Kothmans and I'm like, hey, I got a client looking for XYZ. And he's like, let me talk to this person, and Uncle Joe, they've considered selling. So a lot of our deals are still networking. It's not you put it on the internet and hope for somebody to come. You actually have to hustle these deals and really do some guerrilla marketing and connect. We all work together in farm and ranch. Also to, your reputation as a farm and ranch agent, representing quality clients. That's where, to me, knowing how to interview buyers and interview sellers, because they're going to be an extension of you. And if you show up with somebody and you haven't thoroughly interviewed them or done that background check due diligence, and you show up on a multi-million property and they're just there to kick tires or quote unquote, unfortunately, scope the place out to maybe steal some very valuable things, that's on you. Being trusted in your market is also a very, big deal. And part of being trusted, not just by clients, but by other agents in that niche market, is for you to be highly educated and understand the do's and don'ts of this field of real estate.
You all has a question of, that's amazing, by the way. Back to
Sorry, I'm over here dying. Like the AC is on like 86 and I'm still sweating. It's so hot outside.
I can't tell at all. You look amazing. Tina has a question. As agents experience different areas, is it ideal to market a certain niche and then change your niche and keep changing till you find the one? Because what about the agents that are like, what the fuck, do I do? It took, you knew what you wanted to do. You knew where your expertise was, but what about the agents that are like, what am I good at?
Well, that's like a problem before the problem. Well, first things first, let's hope you're good at selling houses. But if you're not, then what is it? What speaks to you? I think maybe getting a list of the types of niche markets. One way you can do that is to look through and mind you, I refer to Texas. However, wherever state you're in, go back to your real estate commission and look at all the contracts. So that's going to be your basic niches. So unimproved property outside of, residential, there's probably going to be unimproved property. There's probably going to be condominium contracts. Maybe you're great at selling condos. That's a niche market depending on your area. There's a farm and ranch contract. There normally is something for rural land. Most states in the US have farm and ranch contracts, commercial contracts. And then diving into those as far as, well, what about your area? Let's look at region. What's popular in your region? Do you have a ton of B&Bs? Selling investment properties is another niche market. But if you're selling investment properties, are you good at math? if you're doing investments, you're going to have to know how to read a P&L report, or at least explain the basics to your client. A P&L is profit and loss. So if you're really good at finances and financial, that may be your niche market. You really need to break down your own passions. Also too, if you haven't done a DISC profile, I don't know, Sandy, what you think about DISC profiles, like in evaluations, but it basically breaks down your internal, like, here is who I am unapologetically. So DISC, like the D stands for, very dominant and out there. So I'm a D.
We're Ds. We're both Ds.
Yeah,
that's why we get along so well, I think.
Absolutely. So you need to figure out, some basic just who you are, humanity. And then also too, you obviously live in a certain community or area that provides some sort of niche selling. So I would say take a look at that. Outside of residential, what else is real estate wise selling? So, I live in Fredericksburg, Texas, where there's a ton of investment property, B&Bs, investment downtown, downtown location, like commercial buildings that buy and sell, but they also are leasing, helping your clients with a triple net lease, which is very lucrative, and is making them a lot of money. Vineyards, breweries. So take a look at what opportunity zones are going on in your area. I think that's another way to help you, and dive in. That's why I say also shadowing people that are experts in the field. Like if you have a guy who's a bigwig commercial broker, shadow them. Also too, our I'm assuming like a lot of y'all are EXP in the EXP network, joining some of these groups and finding out what are some great niches. But if you don't have that niche opportunity in your location, first things first, like, if you don't have ranches in your area, you can't, you really can't, you don't have anything to sell. So I think also too, to help you with that is find out what niches are in your market, outside of residential. And I'd be happy to help as well. And I think too, going to the economic development board in your community and seeing, what the growth aspect is, selling industrial is a massive opportunity in these bigger cities. That was something I was not familiar with. So you could go to your economic development board and say, hey, what does our community need? And a lot of them will say, well, due to tax purposes and the city growth plan, we actually need these type of opportunity zones in our community. Estates. This is another big one. If you're a really amazing people person, as far as like dealing with grief and a lot of conflict, if you're like almost a therapist,
and divorce is another.
We're not going to go to divorce yet, because that's a whole nother bag of crazy. But what I do want to tell you is dealing with estates and estate planning and probate. Not even getting to the real estate. There's agents that do the whole gamut. They help the client find attorneys. They get through the probate process. They get through most properties have to do an estate sale. Some properties, they're heirs that don't get along. Sometimes the heirs don't get along so much that the court now decides what happens to the property. So that is an amazing market, because more often than not, they have to sell the property. It was my mother's house and she passed away. And so we're left with all this overwhelming, real estate stressful, on top of the fact that they're all grieving. Now you're helping them close this chapter. And so there are amazing agents that take on that niche market, and they are very, very good. And they have the passion to help people at that level, because it's not for the faint hearted. You just don't show up. Like I said, it really has to be a part of your spirit and who you are and your passion, because one, it'll wear you out. Because if you're not made for that type of, situation and people, divorce is a very, very niche market, and understanding the laws and understanding, where are we at? Is the court telling the couple what to do, or the couple, are they still amicable? Like, are they still working together? And also too, the title company, hey, when they sell, what in their divorce decree does it say, where, how does the money go, or are there debts to be paid off? So there's a lot of legal things you need to understand to ask those questions and get all the parts talking to one another. I have sold divorce ranches. It is not fun. But if you have that, wanting to help. And I think for me, just, the ranch is the greater opportunity. The hunting ranch is a greater opportunity and the passion for me. So, I can sweat my butt off at 107 degrees like I did 2 days ago in Junction, Texas, looking at a 600-acre live water ranch with, a mile and a half of river frontage and wells. The water opportunity is amazing, and Texas water's king. So, being able to justify the price for that and explain it to a client and look at, okay, this is going to be a part of your portfolio. You're going to hold it for 10 years, develop it in 7, and, this, that, and the other. So not to jump down the rabbit hole but not just looking at yourself, but looking at the region you're in. Because if it doesn't have that niche market opportunity to sell, obviously you can check that off the list. I hope that was helpful.
Okay. So we have a hard stop at 11, and Morgan Ireland has a question. I have a farm and ranch listing valued at just under $1 million in North Texas. However, the neighboring pasture that is on the drive to the property is pretty much a junkyard / car repair facility, whatever you want to call it. It's an eyesore to everyone driving to the property. Do you have any insight on how to approach that? It's out of the county, so dealing with the city isn't an option right now. I'm just unsure of what to do besides asking the neighbor to move their shit. Any thoughts?
Yes, a few thoughts. And mind you, I can't see the layout of this property at all. So, and I dealt with this actually on a very, very nice, beautiful ranch, and some of those neighbors have been there for years. First, I would check with the county and see and maybe talk to the title company. So I use Rancher's Title. Let me back up. So I use Rancher's Title because also our attorney, our farm ranch attorney, is there. And so what I would probably do before you put a property on the market is I would also have them pull the deed to the neighbor's property and see maybe if there's any restrictions. Also, too, if there are any county codes, I'm guessing I think you said it was in the county. So check in and see if there's any county codes, if there's anything there that they're violating that you can get the city or state involved. Also, just environmental. So some of the issues with cars or equipment, an abandoned, kind of junkyard is, let me tell you, the TCEQ, the Texas Water Association and Board, if there is oil or gas leaking into the soil going into our water source, I promise you, they will, mandate those things. So thinking outside the box, I would probably check with those entities first, because if there is something in writing, that's not you as the agent or the neighbor having this sometimes hard conversation, because you also want the neighbors to cooperate. You don't want them to be bad neighbors or hate the person you sell it to. So, keeping that line of communication of let's be neighborly. But if there any way you can filter it through somewhere else where there is a hard legal way to address it to where it's mandated and fixed. Another thing you can do is, so in the situation where I had that ranch where the gate we drove into passed the neighbor's junkyard and their cleaning shack, where when they shot a deer, it was very common, to have your your cleaning facility for your animals here, in the hill country. We all shoot deer to fill our freezer. So there was just, like I said, it's pretty junky as well. Totally get it. What we did is we looked at the map, and the property, touched the road in a different place to where you could actually build a gate and an entryway to where you never even saw that property. So I'll be happy to look at a map with you and see if that maybe there's some other opportunities to access the property where you don't see that. I'll tell you that I completely did not know that was an option. Actually, it was my broker of a larger conglomerate that I did farm and ranch with. He's like, here's how I would solve that problem. So having somebody to assist you with that, those are some of the out of the box. And, you know, really your last resort is talking to them, because a lot of people are what we call land rich, cash poor. So, you know, it may be something that, hey, we really don't have the money, you know, knowing the neighbor, they may be in a tight spot. Hey, you know, I inherited this property. I don't know how to do this. I don't have any help. I don't have the money. Maybe it's one of those things where, you know, to sell your client's property, you guys work together to help them, you know, or organize, you know, the Boy Scouts to come out and clean up stuff. So, you know, sometimes really talking to your neighbor and finding out what the situation is. They may not have the resources, you know, they may want to clean it up, but they don't have that ability, and finding a way to problem solve. So, you know, offering comfort and solutions. Also too, I tell people, you know, it's not always going to look that way, you know. Properties turn over, people pass away. So depending on what the investment is. So those are some nuggets. I mean, like I said, I don't have a solid overview of what the property is, but if you'd like to talk to me one-on-one and we look at it on a map, I'd be happy to help you. I know we have a hard stop, so if anybody like has questions, just hit me with them.
Okay, so how can everybody get a hold of you or find you if anybody wants to learn more about ranches? Lindsey Hollin.
Hold on one second. Let me get this in the chat. Hopefully it'll. Okay, so I have a Calendly. Do you by chance have my link? If you don't, I'm going to take and get it right now. One way is you can reach out and call me. And my phone number is very, very easy. It is 1-833-TX-RANCH. So if you're old school, like there are letters where the number is on your phone and you spell out TX Ranch. So 1-833-TX-RANCH. Also, I just got my Calendly. I think that's how you say it. It's just my name. Almost everything I do is, I try to keep it my name at Lindsey Hollin. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, on YouTube, any type of social media, I do have a Farm and Ranch Friday class every Friday where we dive into educational pieces of ranches coming up. I actually have Nolly Williams, who is an amazing lead generator for getting listings and then just leads in general. We do a farm and ranch spin on that with our stuff. And then the Friday after that, we have an amazing land law attorney, and she goes through so many items you know, of land law that your buyers and sellers and landowners need to know. So when you sell a property in a niche market, being able to leave them with education to continue to better their property.
This has been incredible. I've already gotten texts and people, you know, messaging me that they've learned a lot. So thank you so much, Lindsey. Great job.
Thank you. I appreciate all of y'all. And like I said, this is my passion. And if I can inspire someone to grow, and the more you know, the more you grow, and you grow financially, spiritually, you know, in your field, you know, I feel like that's my gift to share. So I appreciate all of y'all for being here. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Awesome. Well, we'll see everybody next week for next week's WTF Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Bye.